If that's all that we're missing, that's great.
Sounds good.
We are good to go. We're live if you want to make an opening statement.
Yeah, we got beat the other night by a talented football team whose effort and physicality matched their talent. Our guys fought, but at the end of the day, we were outmatched, and we got beat by a good football team that had 0 turnovers, had no self-inflicted wounds, and they executed at a high level. So most important for us, obviously told our guys yesterday, we got to turn the page. We got to get back to work. No lingering effects from what happened the other night. It's all about Central Michigan now. I would imagine both teams are having somewhat similar conversations, but we're on the road against a team that we've had some battles with here the last couple years. So we got to get ourselves back to work. I feel confident after meeting with the leadership council. Kind of those guys are the pulse, heartbeat of the team, if you will. But liked what I heard from that group of guys. We got to own it. We got beat. And so there are 0 excuses. We got to get back to work here, and we got to make sure we have a great week of preparation, attacking the 3 Central Michigan games that have been played this year, and attacking the tape the best we can.
Just a little bit more on last week's game. Keontae, after the game, said that there was a bit of communication errors on the defense. Were you made aware of that during the game?
I can hear, obviously, during the course of the headset, and the one thing that you want to make sure that we get cleaned up is whether it was struggling to get lined up, whether it was an adjustment, whether it was a motion, whether it was a shift, or whether it was a formation piece of it. We got to keep working on the communication piece. I don't believe he was referring to the headsets or anything like that. So those are things that you got to get cleaned up. And so one thing I addressed to make sure and address with the staff after the game, we got to make sure that we're putting our guys in a position to execute what we know they can execute. And certainly there's in-game adjustments that you have to make if there's something they show throughout the course of the game. When you're watching the iPads on the sideline, if they're showing something that was different than what we prepared for all week, you got to be able to make an in-game adjustment. So the communication piece of it, we got to make sure that we're getting lined up. We're not out of position. We can't give up explosive plays that are uncontested. And so those are the ones that you look at. That we got to get that fixed.
Keontae also felt like just the defense in particular had a lot of self-inflicted wounds. I think you mentioned that as well. What do you chalk that up to?
Well, again, I give them credit. I don't want to take anything away from them because they're a talented football team that's got some speed, and obviously they got us in space the other night, and we struggled to tackle. You could look at the film and you can say whatever you want to whether we lost or. At the end of the day, we gave up some big explosive plays in space that were, whether it was perimeter screen game, whether it was, and obviously there were some where we were out of position as well. So we got to get that corrected. We played a lot of guys in that game the other night. Tell every young guy in here, you better be ready to play because your number is going to be called. So you got to be locked in meetings. You got to take notes because that when it happens in the course of the game, nobody's going to announce it. It just happens. So that's why staying ready and that being part of the message always, week in, week out. You got to be ready when your number's called. And we as coaches got to make sure we put our guys in a position to execute what we know they can execute.
Yeah, and kind of on the execution standpoint, Braden Sloan, I think his main thing was we just got to execute when our number's called. Do you feel like even despite the loss, it is a little encouraging that players know that they're not executing rather than you having to tell them that?
It is. I mean, I think that it speaks to guys taking ownership. It's not hard when you go out there. Our margin for error is extremely slim when you're playing against a team like that. You got to execute a near perfect game plan in order to have a chance. And we just simply didn't get that done the other night. Obviously, you can't have a breakdown by one guy on any given play, or else. The results end up the way they did the other night. So, and again, you say that, you don't want guys going out there feeling like got the weight of the world on their shoulders and they got to do something superhuman because you try to preach that. The biggest thing that happens when you play against an opponent like that is guys try to do something more than what they need to, or they try to do something that's heroic. And it's like, no, we got to have 11 guys do their job to the best of their ability to put ourselves in a position to even have a chance.
Yeah. Did you feel like self-awareness, no matter what loss it is, do you think that helps in kind of moving on from a loss and looking forward?
I would say the most important thing for guys is making sure that there's no lingering effects from a game like that. I firmly believe that our confidence is not shook. I think that we went up against a good football team, and we have acknowledged that. And I think when you're a good football team and you play hard, like they did the other night, and you play physical like they did the other night, and then you execute at a high level, and you don't have any self-inflicted wounds, you end up with what happened the other night. So I'm not worried about our guys being able to turn the page. We play Central Michigan now. It's a conference game. It's a first conference game for both teams. Both teams are going to be hungry. We're going to be wanting to fight back to prove ourselves and what we feel strongly that we're capable of. And again, it all goes back to getting yourself taken care of Sunday and Monday because you're beat up. Everybody's going to be beat up from this point forward. But you got to get yourself taken care of Sunday and Monday when you're not on the practice field. And we get back out there Tuesday, we got to be sunk into the game plan. And good thing is we played against some of the guys on their team the last couple years. They've got some returning starters. We're familiar with some of the guys, no different than we did. They did the same thing, having a few guys that they brought in from the transfer portal. So now it's just we got to get back to work here and make sure that our practice days, Tuesday and Wednesday, the heavy work days, we got to make sure we go maximize that time on the field.
Who are some of those guys on Central Michigan that you guys are kind of pinpointing?
Well, starting with their quarterback, obviously they brought in Joey Labus, who was a transfer from Iowa. Familiar with him from back in the day in recruiting process. Awesome. The opening game against Central Connecticut State, they were extremely explosive, a lot of big plays. Obviously, it was really a matter of turnovers in their game against Florida International on the road. But really, you look at the Illinois game, they did a good job. They were in that game. Their second possession of the game, they went down and what appeared to be scored a touchdown. Then it got called back, and they ended up settling for a field goal. And then right before the half, they took it down in a 2-minute. It was 10-3 at the time. Had a chance on third down, and then ended up settling for a field goal. So they were right there. Didn't capitalize on a couple of red zone opportunities they had to put touchdowns on the board, and then in the second half, Illinois pulled away a little bit there. But they've got some, starting with a quarterback that really has done some good things. Had a tough night, with 5 interceptions against Florida International, but really bounced back and made some good decisions the other day. Ran their offense. Obviously, they're going to try to be balanced in what they do in terms of run, pass, and then defensively. We're familiar with a lot of guys on that defensive line. We're familiar with a lot of guys that are playing linebacker. Justin Whiteside's been there a long time. This is his 6th year. We played against him. Obviously, Dante Kent, we played against him. He's going to line up at corner. He's going to line up at nickel. He's going to line up all over the field. Good football player that's played high-level play in this conference for a long time. So we're familiar with some of those guys, but really it's about us making sure we go out and execute and play the way we're capable.
And then not a whole lot of rushing attempts against Miami. Is that something that we can expect to change maybe for Central?
Yeah, absolutely. We got to be balanced. It always starts every week. You want to make sure you do a good job of having a good run plan because that helps set up everything else. So no question about it. Hard at work. That's the number one goal. As you go into this week, number one goal every week, we got to be able to establish a run because if you get in a one-dimensional type of game, that's tough, man. You get in a one-dimensional game, you're trying to throw the ball every single down. That's not a good recipe to have success week in, week out.
And is there any updates on Bowick and Robinson?
Nothing new right now. Obviously, would anticipate, Ty. Both those guys made the trip with us to South Florida, but don't have anything right now to believe that they would be on the practice field as we get back out here Tuesday and Wednesday. So no great update other than me just anticipating for now that they would probably be out.
Do you feel like you talk about all these returners that they have on their defense, and while they are good players, do you feel like it is an advantage that you guys do have a lot of not only experience but film on them? Yeah,
and Coach McElwain's been there since 19, and some of the guys that are on his staff, familiar with them. Coach Akey's been there with him, so obviously familiar with him. But make no mistake about it, they're going to be ready to play. They're going to obviously turn all their attention and focus to a first conference game. They're playing at home. And obviously, reading the quote after the game, you want to make sure, one of the first things you mentioned, we got to take care of our own turf. We got to take care of our house. And obviously they're going back home and playing a first conference game. So we're going to get their best stuff, and that's our goal on our end, to make sure we have our best stuff ready to go.
Miami's front seven kind of, dominated the game in the trenches there. What do you want to see the offensive line kind of learn from that?
Obviously, again, I don't want to take anything that Miami was as talented of a front that we played besides Georgia, to be truthful with you. And they were very attacking vertically off the ball, and they were athletic, man, way more athletic and twitchier than probably gave them credit for watching the film going into the game. So, obviously, I think our guys competed. up front, but it was tough when you're playing the way they were and they were getting off the ball and getting some penetration. So I know our guys, they played a lot of football. They played against good football teams. They know it's got to be better, and you learn from anytime you get a chance to take the field, you learn from whoever your opponent was, and I know our guys will do that, and they'll respond back, coming back this week and going back to work.
And then kind of on that note, with the offensive line, Kadin was kind of under duress a lot of the time that game. What did you like that you saw from him kind of playing under
He's
pressure?
tough, and he's a competitor, but we got to do our job, too, and giving him some time. He's got to have time to operate in the pocket, and there wasn't a whole lot of time to get past your first or second read, and so from a progression standpoint, I think he did everything he could. He obviously we want to do a good job of avoiding the sack if at all possible, but at the same time we got to help him out, and everybody's got to do their part in that, whether it's the guys up front, whether it's the tight ends, whether it's receivers, the backs when they're involved in the protection piece of it. So we just got to keep working and know that we played against a good football team, and now we got to move on from that.
Anything more for Coach? All right, we'll have Riley Tolsma, Kadin Semonza.
Thanks,
Just
guys.
one.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Coach.
You guys want to just open with questions? Go right ahead.
I think the first thing is, obviously you had your first 2 games of Division I football under your belt, but with Miami specifically, playing a team like that, I would assume it's pretty far and away the best team you've ever played against. What do you feel like you took away most from that game?
Well, obviously, their offensive line was huge. They were all 6'5" or bigger, and they were definitely the best players I've went against. But I felt like we still stand a chance, and we could stand our own. Like in the first half, I know we did a really good job against the run. I think they had like 20 yards rushing or something in the first half. But overall, yeah, I feel like we can compete and stand our own against them. But it's definitely a difference.
They said after the game that there were some communication issues on defense, not necessarily with the headset, but just in general. Are you experiencing some of that on the line?
Yeah, I think there was just overall as a defense, we didn't do a good enough job of communicating, and that led to some of the lapses and some of the big plays that we gave up.
Is that a focus? I'm sure it's a focus every week, but is it even more emphasized when your true Cardinal number 1 or tough Cardinal number 1 is saying that that's the biggest issue from this past week?
Yeah, we go as Keontae goes. He's our most vocal leader on the team. He's TC1, and obviously that'll be a big emphasis for us in practice this week.
Yeah. And then you're heading into your first MAC game. I'm sure that your teammates have emphasized the importance of Mid-American Conference play. What have you been told by your teammates, and what do you kind of expect from a MAC atmosphere?
I just expect it to be a super hard-fought game. Most of the games I've heard are always tight. They always come down to the last possession. So, it's going to be really grinded out. Got to find a way to make plays, separate yourself.
Has there been like a noticeable difference between Division II and Division I football?
There's definitely a difference. Players are better, but it's not like otherworldly. Like, it's not like I feel like I'm in a different league or anything. It's just players are big, they're fast, but there's good fast players in D2 as well. So
Yeah. Obviously it's early, but how have you kind of gone about adjusting to the maybe increase in athleticism?
I don't think I approach it any differently. Just take the same approach, just trying to get better every day. Like, I practice against our guys every day, and our offensive line is all really good. So I think it's really prepared me for the season.
For sure.
Mike kind of talked about turning that page after Miami, just kind of forgetting about it. How do you personally turn your own page after that game?
Personally, I look at it as we're 0-0 in MAC play. The season's just starting again. Obviously non-conference games are important, but the whole MAC schedule is ahead of us. So,
what do you see when evaluating just Central Michigan? I know it's so early.
They definitely have a talented team. They have a lot of experience on their offensive line. A lot of the guys are old and have been around for a while, and they have some good skill position as well.
Do you think that having tape on guys for multiple years where their offensive line has kind of been set for the last few years, does that give you guys any type of advantage?
I think so. I really like when we have a lot of tape on guys because there's just more to look off of, more to see where you can get advantage, where they're weak, where they're strong. just anything that you can get any sort of an edge, I really like, rather than having it where they haven't had any experience and you don't really know what you're going to get.
Right. So that it does make a difference,
Yeah, I'd say so.
for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned the offensive line here being good. Going up against guys with so much experience in practice, do you feel like that really helps you with, going up into an actual game type setting, especially in MAC play?
Yeah, definitely. Because our offensive line has been around, they've seen stuff, and I think it really helps to have that challenge and go against them, because I have to be on the top of my game in practice to be able to succeed, just as I have to be on the top of my game in the actual games.
So going up against them in practice is one thing. How much do they kind of help you out, like with film, other sort of pointers, things like that?
Yeah, so I like to just pick the offensive lineman's brain whenever I can, whether it be after practice or after a rep. I just like to see where they think and see how they react to what I do and what works against them and what doesn't. So I just like to talk it out with them.
Anything else for Riley? All right.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day, sir. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Kadin, come on up.
How y'all doing? Good, thank you.
Obviously, there was significant pressure from Miami's defensive line. Can you kind of just take us through what's going on in your head and maybe what you're seeing when you're under pressure as a quarterback?
I mean, it's just all part of the job. You know what I mean? I thought the O-line did a great job. They had very talented guys up front, and I had, more than enough time back there to do what I needed to do. So, we couldn't really get anything going on offense, but, at the end of the day, it is what it is, and we're moving on to next week. So.
Yeah, and you've had playing time against 3 very significant opponents in the last 2 seasons now. Has there been a significant takeaway from playing against Kentucky, Georgia, and Miami?
Yeah, I mean, all those games that you speak about, we didn't get the outcome we wanted, right? But being out there at the same time, I know me and our guys, we can compete with anybody. I know the score doesn't show that, of course, but we didn't play our best game really in any of those games. And when you play teams like that, you need to play your best game. You can't, be down and hurt yourself and shoot yourself in the foot. So we for sure can play with anybody in the country, and it's just a matter of us putting it all together.
Yeah, and I know execution was kind of said to be an issue from Mike and from Kadin Semonza on Saturday. What needs to be done to clean up the execution?
Just focus on us, all 11 guys doing their job, one play at a time, and just rolling from there, making sure we do what we need to do, play in, play out, and being consistent. Consistency is the biggest thing.
Yeah. How have you noticed the rest of the wide receiver room step up in the absence of Justin and Ty?
Like I said last time I was in here, I mean, we got playmakers everywhere. Next minute mentality, those guys are all ready to go. And I got, just the same amount of trust in all of them. So.
Yeah. And then I'm curious about just adding Kyle in sporadically in the offense, whether he's a running back, quarterback, or wide receiver. What does the dynamic look like when he's on the field?
He's just an explosive player. He's too good for us not to put him out there and give ourselves an advantage. So whatever way we can give him the ball, we're going to try to do that.
It seems like opposing defenses have maybe seen what might be coming when he's out there. Do you think that there's any way that you guys can disguise that better?
Oh, for sure, 100%. And week by week, we'll get in the film room and we'll figure out the next best way to get him involved, for sure.
And then you do have a little bit of experience, I think, against Mid-American Conference play and definitely watching your team go through Mid-American Conference play. What's the biggest difference for you as a quarterback between non-conference and conference play?
Obviously, conference is, the most important games we're going to play. Not to say any are less important. You kind of get what I mean by that is, it all comes down to how we do in the MAC. And like I said before, we're going to take it like any other week and prepare like we always do and go out there expecting to win.
And then I know that everybody has been saying how focused they are on moving on from Saturday. Is it difficult at all, or maybe what's the process look like for you when moving on for a loss?
Well, I mean, of course, it's not easy. No one here in this building wants to lose, no matter who you play. So, of course, it's tough to move on from a loss, especially like that. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's part of the game. We're going to move on, and come tomorrow when it's time to practice, we'll be ready to go, and we're on to Central Michigan.
Do you think that mentality of, taking that loss as a team and then moving on will really help you guys in the future?
For sure. I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, it didn't go how we wanted. But we're going to find out a lot about this team this week, see how we bounce back and see how we do.
You guys were kind of forced to abandon the run with the game script and the run being kind of shut down. And Mike was just telling us about wanting to, keep the offense a little more balanced this week. As a quarterback, how does it, increase your confidence knowing you have like a reliable running game that's going behind you?
It means the world, of course. I mean, without a solid run game, you can't really have too much success throwing the ball. So once you open that up, we'll be able to do the things we want to do through the air too.
How have you and Braden kind of developed some chemistry with him being, new this year? And you guys, you targeted him a lot out of the backfield this past game.
Just practice, getting reps that we need to get in practice, spending some time off the field. Great dude, love him to death. He's a really good player too, so I'm looking forward to get him going.
Was that the original game plan to kind of be more pass heavy against Miami?
I wouldn't say pass heavy. I'd say we had a little bit of both in the game plan. Of course, when the score gets like that, early, we got to do what we got to do to try to win the game. So.
You feel like in the future when you guys are down, even if you're going to run less, do you feel like maybe you should run a little bit more than you did on Saturday?
I think it all depends on the situation. I mean, I got full faith in Coach Elliott and staff. They're going to do the right thing for us.
For sure.
How difficult is that to adapt the game plan as it goes on?
I think it's all part of the job. I mean, you can practice all you want, script out all you want during the week, but when it comes to Saturday, stuff's going to get thrown at you, and it's all about how you can react.
Do you think an experience like that against Miami, where you have to change up so many things, can help you as the season goes on?
Yeah, I think if we have the right perspective on it, I think for sure, yes.
Anything more?
That's all I got.
All right. Kadin, you're off the hook.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Mick will take you for a few moments and do a little